We're going to start by running the number 4 lever completely closed. Make sure that you are consistently cutting against the grain, that way the hair is even throughout. And no matter what guard or clipper you're using, you always want to go over the top a few times. So here I'm combing the hair just to reset it, and then I'll go ahead and pass it through one more time. I'm constantly dusting off the client. You always want to work with a clean canvas as much as possible. Now to begin our first guideline, we're going to use no guard and close the lever completely. Starting at that temple peak area, we're going to angle it coming towards the ear, and let's begin. I highly suggest that you keep a small brush on your opposite hand to then clean your canvas every few strokes. And go over your guidelines at least more than once, as it is critical to get them as clean as possible. And I use this connection to set the guideline for the back taper. When you're viewing him from the back, the guideline is more so on the upper hand of the earlobe. And same thing for the opposite side. Make sure that you do start at that temple peak area. Now for our second guideline, still no guard, but we're going to open the lever completely and take that up about ½ an inch or so. Make sure that this guideline does run parallel to the one underneath it. That way your fade is even throughout. Stay soft and easy with these strokes, guys, as it will be a lot easier when we come back down and start to erase these guidelines. Now with our number 1 guard, lever still in that fully open position, we're going to come in and set in our third guideline, and it's going to be the same process, taking that up about ½ an inch to an inch or so. And don't forget that same key concept of having these guidelines parallel to each other. Next, we're going to use our number 2 guard, lever still in that fully open position, and continue the process. As you can see with this guard, I am exaggerating that flick out motion, as I do not want to dig in and create a deep line. If you are smoothing of, the 2 almost blends right into that 4. And just as a rule of thumb, I do keep that lever fully open when setting up these guidelines, guys. All that changes is the guards. And finally, for the number 3, just to connect that 2 to the 4. Lever still fully open. As you can see, it really didn't need it, but I do like to tighten up the fade as much as possible. By now you should have the first guideline that we created with the 0, second that we created with the lever open, and third that we created with the 1 guard lever open. We're going to start with that one and work our way down. Using my 1½ guard, I'm going to close the lever just slightly, putting it into a 3/4 position. It's basically somewhere in between halfway and fully open. And using mainly the corners of the clipper, guys, I'm going to attack that upmost guideline. As you can see in the back, I have those same 3 guidelines. Starting with that top one and working our way down. And yes, my clippers are 0 gap, guys. I will leave a link down in the description below on how we do 0 gap our clippers, as I highly suggest that you try it as well. Now to work on that second guideline coming down, we're going to use our half guard. Lever still in that 3/4 position. Do not move the lever, guys. Using again mainly just the corners of the clipper. He did have a small design on this side, that's why it looks a little off, but we're gonna work through it. And this process does create a faint line right above it, but do not take this step any higher, as we will come back right now with the 1 guard and remove that. Just really focus on taking away that initial guideline. So like I mentioned, not to remove this faint line, we're gonna use a number 1 guard, but we're still gonna leave the lever in that 3/4 position, guys. Now to remove that first guideline that we created with the 0, we're gonna start by closing the lever all the way, then we're gonna open it halfway, and then we're gonna open it up all the way completely. And we're gonna use that same 3-step process, taking each of those notches up just slightly. I found that by taking away that first initial guideline that we created with the 0, with the actual 0, it almost compresses the fade real nice, so I highly suggest y'all try it, guys. Finally, the lever is open completely. And once we're done with that 3-step process, guys, we're gonna do any touch-up work. Using my half guard, I'm gonna use the lever completely open and just adjust as I go, which is called lever play. And this lever play is gonna really vary from one side of the head to another and from client to client, so there is no 1-step process for this. You'll just develop an eye for it with time. Again, using that 3-step process, my lever is completely closed. Now we're gonna go halfway. And take your time with all of this, guys. My haircuts do take me anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes, and that is per client. I usually like to focus on as much detail as possible. Now the lever is completely open and finishing off the process. Again, now to just do any touch-up work. And I'm gonna use my trimmer in this forward position to get a lot closer to the scalp, and then turn it around and remove the faint line that created. And by using my trimmer forward, it's just gonna get a lot closer to the scalp, and it's gonna create a distinction from that bottom hair that I still need to remove to the fade. And you'll see that it's gonna leave a faint line. That way we know exactly how high up to take the electric shaver. Just make sure that your trimmers are properly 0 gap, because if you're using them in that forward position and they're not, you will scratch the client. You can see this is that faint line that I was speaking of. Now we have a distinction from the bottom hair to the fade. It's very subtle, but it is there. Now to use our electric shaver. And as you approach that faint line, always use your electric shaver as if it was a clipper. Turn it around and use the corners of it. That way you don't create another line on top of that. Now to start edging up the sides. As usual, I always trim some, then brush the hair down and then go over it a few times. Here I'm just using spritz. It's basically a hairspray, and I'm gonna blow dry the hair down. That way we get the hair as clean as possible for the lineup. Always start in that middle position and work your way to the sides. And even before I start working on the other side, I kind of always readjust, realign, start from the middle, and then move my way to the opposite side. Here I'm just cleaning up his eyebrows. I always highly suggest that you ask your client if they want any of their facial hair touched up or eyebrows. Go that extra mile, and even clean some of the nose hair if they got some sticking out, guys. Here I'm applying shave gel. A quick tip I have for y'all with shave gel, I do spray a little bit of water after the shave gel just to keep the hair moist. And start by shaving with the grain and then come back at it against the grain. Always using your opposite hand to stretch the skin to ensure a smoother shave. Social media, how to reach out for sponsors that are new. Here I have pomade really emulsified. As you saw, it's almost transparent in my hand. That's how much you have to emulsify that pomade so you don't have clumps in his hair. Here I'm just adding a little bit of semi-permanent hair dye. The link is in the description below for this air gun, guys, in case y'all want to check them out. Here's the before in case y'all forgot. It's only been maybe like 2 or 3 weeks since he's last seen me. And here's the after, a 4 all around with a bald taper, guys.